All right, welcome back. I hope 2022 is off to a good start. Today we are continuing our RBT exam practice question series where we're going through 10 RBT questions and breaking them down how you should think about it on your actual exam. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please remember to like and subscribe. That really helps me out and I really appreciate it. If you're looking for our study materials, be sure to check out rbtexamreview.com. We offer 3 full practice exams, a full task list study guide, and our combo pack, which comes with everything and flashcards. So be sure to check out all those materials. As always, this is how we think you can pass the RBT exam most effectively. Learn the terms and definitions is the most important part. If you don't know your terms, if you don't know your definitions, the exam becomes much more difficult. Once you're fluent, start doing practice questions, start working on your skills. Then you want to take some practice exams and simulate the real day. And then once you pass your real thing, you become an RBT. So keep working hard, keep studying hard. Any questions you have, please let me know. I'm happy to help. Other than that, let's get to our questions. Question 1. Your 4-year-old client recently started communicating using vocal language. Your supervisor wants to teach yes and no when appropriate. You work on this program for 2 weeks. Now, when you ask your client questions, they always respond with yes. This is considered what? So this is pretty common when we are working on generalizing, right, skills that we're teaching, okay? For instance, if you're teaching somebody that a cat is called a cat, well, if you just teach that and they see a dog or a horse, they might now call the dog and the horse cats, right? They're not discriminating, okay? They are just calling everything they see cats because they just see animals and they think cat, right? So what is that considered? That is a form of overgeneralization, right? And in this case, we have our 4-year-old client who we're teaching yes and no to. And when we ask them questions, now they're just saying yes over and over again. So I could say, is the sky green? They'll say yes. Is water red? They could say yes, right? What are they doing? Well, they're clearly overgeneralizing yes, okay? So if we look at our answer choices, we have stimulus generalization, response generalization. C is overgeneralization, is what we're looking for. But if we read D, it says both A and C. So is this also a form of stimulus or response generalization? Well, think about it. What is our trick for stimulus and response generalization? We ask ourselves, how many responses do we have? How many stimuli do we have? And in this case, we have one response. What is the response? The response is yes. We're using that same response of yes across multiple stimuli. Okay, no matter what question we ask, we're always getting yes. So when you have one response across multiple stimuli, that is considered what? That is also considered stimulus generalization. So in this scenario, what is occurring? Well, stimulus generalization is occurring. Overgeneralization is also occurring. Okay, overgeneralization is when you are engaging in a response in the wrong scenario. Okay, and that's what's occurring here. So if we look at our answer choices, D is going to be our best answer, both A and C. Again, a good reminder of why we want to read all of our answer choices. Okay, and we want to know why are the wrong answers wrong. Okay. B is clearly wrong. Response generalization has to do with a single stimulus and multiple responses. We only have one response, right? So it's not going to be B. Again, our answer is D, both A and C. Okay, which of the following best represents the y-axis? All right, so we have a graphing question here. This is what we consider a line graph. This line in the middle, okay, is separating our interventions. Typically 1, 2, and 3, this is going to be our baseline data. 4, 5, 6, 7 will be intervention data, all right? Don't panic around graphing questions. They're very easy, they're very straightforward, okay? This one is just asking, hey, what represents the y-axis? So if we look at our graph, okay, you can see the axis titles are blurred out, okay? So what do? Well, we just start to think, okay, what do we put on the y-axis? What goes on the y-axis? Does time go on the y-axis? Does passage of time? No, passage of time goes on the x-axis, okay? So if we look at our x-axis, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, this is going to represent passage of time, right? This might be sessions, this might be hours, this might be minutes. We don't know, but our x-axis holds time. B, baseline. Well, baseline data is what we have here, 1, 2, and 3 of these data points, okay? Baseline data occurs before intervention, right? Baseline is going to be behavior and time, right? It doesn't go on a single axis, right? It goes on our actual graph, so we can eliminate B, baseline. What about behavior? Yes, your behavior is going on the y-axis. So for instance, if these weren't blurred out, our x-axis title might read sessions. Our y-axis title might read frequency, right? Frequency of client screaming, okay? Behavior goes on the y-axis, time goes on the x-axis. C looks like our answer. Let's read all of our answer choices. D, trend. What is trend? Trend is the way the data is moving. So if we were to describe the trend for 1, 2, and 3, we would say no trend, right? It's very flat. If we were to decide or to describe the trend for 4, 5, 6, and 7, okay, again, no trend. It would be impossible to know what way this data is moving. We have a increase from 5 to 8, but then it decreases sharply, but then it rises again, okay? So our answer here is C, behavior. Behavior goes on the y-axis, time goes on the x-axis. Grace's brother has been non-vocal all his life. Recently, he started speaking in short phrases and sentences. The BCBA suggests that the parents reinforce the brother with anything he asks for on an FR1 schedule. Now, Grace will tell her parents that her brother asked for things like snacks and toys even when he did not. What is the function of Grace's behavior? Okay, good lesson here. When we're dealing with behavior questions and behavior scenarios, make sure you understand who you're looking at. What I mean by that is there are multiple people in this scenario, right? We have Grace, we have her brother, we have the parents. Whose behavior are we concerned with? Okay. The question wants to know about Grace's behavior. What is Grace doing? That's who we care about in this scenario. Always understand that, okay? Don't get bogged down in the details if they're irrelevant. We are looking at Grace's behavior. And the question wants to know, what is the function of Grace's behavior? So what is Grace doing? Grace is telling her parents that her brother is asking for things like snacks and toys. We know that when her brother asks for things, okay, he gets them. So if Grace is telling her parents her brother is asking for things, they are going to be giving him these things. So what is Grace trying to accomplish? Is she trying to obtain tangibles? Yes, we can hypothesize Grace wants to obtain tangibles. She's going to her parents and saying that her brother, let's say, asked for Kit Kat bars. On the suggestion of the BCBA, the parents are supposed to provide Kit Kat bars. So now Kit Kat bars will be provided. Grace is attempting, okay, to obtain a tangible, right? A looks like our best hypothesis. What about B, attention? Is Grace trying to obtain attention? Maybe, but it's very specific things she's asking for, right? So the better answer here is going to be tangibles. It doesn't appear that Grace is lacking any sort of attention in this scenario, okay? So based on our information given, including what happens when her brother asks for something, tangible is still our best option. Remember, we want the best answer, okay? Automatic reinforcement, automatic/sensory. Is this happening by herself? No, this is socially mediated reinforcement, so we can't pick C. And then escape. Is Grace trying to escape from anything? No, not apparently based on our information. So based on our information, Grace is attempting to gain snacks and toys, so therefore she is attempting to gain a tangible. This could be a very similar question you might see in the RBT exam, these behavioral scenarios. Be sure you understand what behavior and whose behavior you are looking at when answering these questions. Joe forgot to call his girlfriend last night when he returned home from going out with his friends. Today, she won't answer any of his calls when she usually picks up immediately. Not answering his calls represents what? Okay, be careful here, right? It's kind of a tricky one. We start with the scenario of Joe forgetting to call his girlfriend last night, okay? Now today, she doesn't answer any of his calls, okay? What are we looking at? Again, what behavior are we looking at? Are we looking at Joe forgetting to call his girlfriend last night? Well, it might be relevant, but we're really looking at the girlfriend's behavior of not answering the calls, okay? And that's today, right? So this was last night, and now we're on today. What typically happens when Joe calls his girlfriend? Well, she picks up, okay? She delivers reinforcement, positive reinforcement. You call me, I answer. You continue to call me. Today, what is she doing? Well, she's not picking up. So what is she actually doing? She's withholding reinforcement. And when we withhold reinforcement for previously reinforced behaviors, what is that considered? Is that negative reinforcement? Well, no, negative reinforcement, we're removing a stimuli or stimulus, okay, to try to increase behavior. Clearly, she's not doing that. She's not removing anything, and she doesn't want to increase any behavior, okay? Is she putting it on extinction? Absolutely. Before, when he called, she would answer, okay? She would answer the phone. That is positive reinforcement. She's now withholding reinforcement. She's putting this behavior on extinction. It's not positive or negative punishment, okay, because nothing is being added and nothing is being taken away. She's simply not answering calls. She's simply withholding reinforcement. Got to be very careful when dealing with extinction and punishment. Extinction is not punishment. Punishment is not extinction. Punishment, we're adding and removing something. In this case, we're just withholding reinforcement. Nothing's being added or taken away, okay? We're just not giving anything, okay? She is putting this behavior on extinction. Kind of a tricky one. Make sure you understand this question, okay? Do it a few times if you have to, all right? When you're studying, it's not about speed. It's not about how quickly you get through it. It's about understanding the questions. And then when you take your practice exams, then you can really test your skills, okay? Because you should be timing yourself in those practice exams on how good you're doing. If you were planning to take latency data, which of the following would be the most appropriate tool to use? Okay, so part of the task list is RBT's prepare for data collection. Part of preparing for data collection is gathering appropriate materials you need, okay? So if you're taking latency data, what do you need? We'll start by asking yourself, what is latency? What am I measuring? Well, latency is the time in between the SD and a response. So you're measuring what? You're measuring some sort of time, okay? Because you're only dealing with one instance, so our frequency is always going to be 1. We're just measuring time in between SD response. So if you want to measure that, what's going to be the best way to do it? Tally marks. Are tally marks going to be especially useful here? Well, not really. What is it? You're going to tally one response. You're not going to tally up the time, okay, because that's going to be very inaccurate. So tally marks aren't going to be very effective at measuring latency. Same with the clicker counter. A clicker counter is one of those, silver things where you click the button and the counter goes up, 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 okay? Great for frequency, not too great for latency. A stopwatch. Yes, this would be great, right? A stopwatch, when the SD is delivered, you can start the stopwatch. When the behavior starts, you can stop the stopwatch. That's going to give you your latency. A stopwatch would be excellent for latency data. C looks like our answer. Let's look at D. Frequency data sheet. Again, frequency is not going to be very useful when taking latency data. It's very important to understand how we take data, why we take data, and what the purpose is. And when you're taking latency, we need some sort of time in between. Therefore, stopwatch will be the most appropriate tool to give us that time. Nate's target behavior is screaming. Nate will scream for long periods of time throughout the day. The function appears to be automatic. The intervention calls for you providing Nate with candy and cookies whenever he isn't screaming. What type of intervention are you implementing? Okay, so we have a differential reinforcement question here. The differential reinforcements you want to know for the exam are DRA, DRI, DRO. How do we differentiate or discriminate between DRA, DRI, and DRO? Well, we ask ourselves some simple questions. First question we ask ourselves with differential reinforcement: are we reinforcing for a behavior not occurring, or are we reinforcing a replacement behavior? If we're reinforcing a replacement behavior, we can eliminate DRO. If we're reinforcing for a behavior not occurring, then our answer is going to be DRO. In this case, is there a replacement behavior? No, right? We are just simply reinforcing Nate whenever he isn't screaming. We're not targeting any change, any behavior change, any replacement. It's just simply the behavior isn't occurring. We are delivering reinforcement. So when we give reinforcement when a behavior doesn't occur, okay, and there's no replacement behavior, we are delivering or implementing DRO. DRA and DRI, all right, have to do with teaching replacement behaviors, okay? So if the question said, you provide Nate with candy and cookies whenever he asks for a break instead of screaming, now we're teaching a replacement behavior. Now we're using DRA or DRI, right? What's the difference between DRA and DRI? Well, with DRI, the replacement behavior cannot happen at the same time as the behavior we're trying to get rid of. With DRA, it can, okay? So differential reinforcement can be tricky. Start by understanding those little tips, okay? DRO, there's no replacement behavior and we're reinforced for a behavior not occurring. DRA and DRI, we reinforce the replacement behavior. DRI, the replacement behavior cannot happen at the same time. DRA, it can. Remember that, remember that, remember that, okay? And you'll never miss one of these questions. So again, in this question, we're reinforcing Nate for not doing something, for not screaming. Therefore, we are implementing DRO. You're an RBT working in-home on a team with 2 other RBTs and a supervising BCBA. One day, the client's parents tells you they don't think the treatment plan is very effective. You felt this way for a long time as well. How should you respond? So you know, as an RBT, you often work on teams. You and other RBTs work together on one client. You have a supervising BCBA. And what happens a lot of times is the parents sometimes have a favorite RBT, okay? They become closer to one RBT than others, right? Some RBTs may be more effective than others, whatever the case might be, okay? And when that happens, the parent might start to trust you, if you are that RBT, more than others, and start giving you feedback on how they feel about the treatment plan, the other RBTs, etc. How should you respond in those scenarios, okay? Remember, we want to work as a team, we want to collaborate, we want to communicate, okay? So what do you do when in this case, the client's parents tells you they don't think the treatment plan is effective, and you think the same thing? So what do you do, okay? A, agree with the client. Tell her that you will talk with your supervisor. Now, be careful here, okay? How does it look when you've been implementing this treatment plan and now you tell your client that, yeah, you don't think it's effective either, okay? It kind of undermines the team, right? So yes, talking with your supervisor is a good course of action, but throwing your BCBA under the bus isn't a great course of action, okay? You should be working as a team, and when you work as a team, you support each other and you look out for the team's best interest. Undermining your BCBA is not in anyone's best interest, okay? So A isn't a great answer. B, tell the client you think the other RBTs are not implementing the plan correctly. Definitely not, okay? I see this more often than I should, where RBTs talk about other RBTs, and you know, if the client likes one RBT and not the other, then they start to talk about that other RBT. You should just avoid that in general. Again, it's about the team and it's about the client, okay? We shouldn't be undermining our other technicians. We should be working as a team. If there's an issue, we need to communicate with those RBTs and not just talk about them to your client, okay? So B, again, not a great answer. C, tell the client that you think your BCBA should change the treatment plan as well. Again, you're telling the wrong person, right? Who should you be communicating with? Who does the task list want you to communicate with? The task list wants you to communicate openly and effectively with your supervisor, with your BCBA. Really what you should be doing is D, tell the client you'll talk with your supervisor, okay? No matter how you feel, right? We should always be still sticking up for our team, trying to make our team look good, trying to get the trust of the client, trying to build rapport with that client. So instead of throwing anybody under the bus, okay, or leading the client down a road of losing faith in the team, you say, okay, I hear you. I will talk with my supervisor. We will try to work it out. Okay, and then once you communicate with your supervisor, you can go from there. Okay, so how do you respond in this situation? D, tell the client you will talk with your supervisor. Bill tells his son to pick up his room. Bill then starts to pick up some of the clothes scattered on the floor. His son immediately starts picking up his room. Bill picking up some of the clothes functions as a what? Okay, so consider in these MOSD prompt consequence questions the order of operations, right? Our contingency, our four-term contingency is MOSD prompt consequence. Our ABC is the SD prompt consequence with the response in between the prompt and the consequence. Okay, so I should say our four-term contingency is MOSD response consequence. Prompt comes after the SD before the response. Okay. Anyway, we have to remember that order. Okay, we have to remember that contingency because it plays a part in this scenario. Bill says pick up your room. Okay, we can assume that is an SD, right? That's an instruction. Okay. Bill then starts to pick up some of the clothes scattered on the floor. The response is his son immediately starts picking up his room. So what is our order of operations here? We have our SD. Bill tells his son to pick up his room. Bill then does what? He models picking up the room. The response is his son immediately starts picking up his room. So if we have an additional SD, okay, or temporary SD in between the SD and the response, that is what? What's considered a prompt. A prompt is just a temporary SD. The real SD is Bill telling his son to pick up his room. Ideally, Bill just wants his son to pick up his room when he says, hey, pick up your room. But Bill still needs to prompt him a little bit, okay, to which his son responds by engaging in the behavior. So Bill picking up some of the clothes functions as a what? Well, it functions as a prompt. It's not an MO, okay? An MO comes before the SD, okay? So MO comes before the SD, remember that. It's not the actual SD, okay? The SD is Bill telling his son to pick up his room. Bill modeling it is a modeling prompt, all right? So the son is just responding to the prompt. And it's not a consequence because the consequence occurs after the response. So that's why we talked about order of operations in the beginning, because it's very important in this scenario. Bill picking up some of the clothes, modeling this behavior, functions as a C prompt. The term successive approximations is most often associated with what intervention? When do we say successive approximations? When do we use this term? Well, typically you'll hear we reinforce successive approximations. What are we talking about? Well, we're trying to get parts or small pieces of a behavior strengthened to get the full behavior. And so when we do that, what are we trying to do? Are we differentially reinforcing behaviors? Maybe, right? You know, in a way we kind of are because we're only reinforcing one behavior, not another, okay? But do we have a better answer? Okay, there's one specific intervention. The definition includes successive approximations. So what is that behavior? Well, B, shaping, okay? The term successive approximations is often associated with shaping because it's what shaping is. Shaping is reinforcing successive approximations. B is just a better answer than A, okay? And then C, maintaining behaviors. Maintaining behaviors, the behavior is already taught, okay? There's no successive approximations. The behavior is already taught. So we can eliminate C. And since we eliminate C, we can eliminate D, all the above. Therefore, we have to pick A or B. B is just the better answer because that is the definition of shaping, reinforcing successive approximations. Again, why you always read all your answer choices. You want to find the best answer every time. Finally, RBTs are required to know the four functions of behaviors. Which of the following is not one of the four functions? Okay, pretty straightforward function question. Functions are probably the first thing you learn, the first thing you know. Okay, so we are going to identify which of the following is not one of the functions. A, automatic. Is automatic a function? It is a function. Okay, a lot of people say, well, my RBT course said sensory is a function. Automatic is sensory. Sensory is automatic. Automatic is the technical term. It's really the right term. Okay, sensory is kind of this catch-all buzzword, you know. but we use it now. So automatic and sensory are the same thing. It's the same function, but it is a function. Okay, so A is not our answer. B, escape. Escape is absolutely a function. Okay, one of the easier ones to remember. C, control. Control is not a function. Some people you'll hear refer to it as the fifth function, the quote unquote fifth function. Okay, because a lot of our children, I should say clients, engage in control type behaviors, but it's not actually a function. Okay, anybody who tells you it is, it's just not. Okay, we have 4 functions. Okay, control is closer to a mentalism than a function, right? C is our answer. What about D, avoidance? Well, avoidance and escape are the same thing, or not the same thing, but they're associated. Okay, avoidance is avoiding an aversive, escape is removing an aversive. Okay, so which of the following is not one of our functions? C, control. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe if you did. We have more questions, of course, every Monday and Wednesday. We also have our BCBA study materials available now. Be sure to check out those every Friday and Saturday. Any questions, comments, let me know. Keep studying hard, work hard. See you soon.